Good evening. Welcome to the It's All Greek to Me blog tour. I'm Dr. Paul Kiritsis, and this is blog number 37. It also happens to be the last blog of the series. And today we're going to be focusing on the viability of alchemical transmutation and alchemical theory. Much of the quixotic appeal of alchemy derives from its fantastical ambitions to perfect nature, to make gold of detritus and stardust. For humanity as a whole, the fascination with such a tradition no doubt stems from an inherent curiosity as to whether or not limitations imposed by Mother Nature herself can ever be transcended. The question of paramount importance has plagued aspiring amateur and master alchemists alike for centuries on end, and the rhetorical enigma attached to the tail end of it explains, at least partially, the persistence of a chemical operative system that first appeared in China during the 4th century BCE as a quest for the elixir of life, an elusive herbal medicine intended to either prolong life or grant life eternal. Echoing the concerns of the Chinese alchemists, as well as the ambitions of the Egypto-Hellenic, Arabic and medieval variants who came afterward, many contemporary esotericists and other intellectual rebels have ventured along the same paths and cultivated the same tottering earth. Those whose gusto and resolve keeps them from abandoning the quest early inevitably reach a forked road presided over by Theban Sphinx, which asks them, can base metals like lead, mercury and whatever else be transmuted into silver and gold? Does the philosopher's stone, that elusive red powder with magical powers of projection, actually exist? Before we attempt to answer such questions prematurely and tempt our own fate in the process, two things should first be established: the authenticity of alchemical theory as a possible framework for the cosmos, and the properties pertaining to the philosopher's stone, such as those described in alchemical treatises on the lesser and greater work, clearly delineated. Logically, for the quest of material alchemy to be viable, the end product must exist and the theory presupposed by the practice which creates it vindicated. If a case for alchemical theory cannot be established and a nexus of qualities belonging to the philosopher's stone cannot be identified, then the pilers holding aloft the mysteries of the grand arcanum and the possibility of metallic transmutation invariably crumble in the manner that Atlantis was razed to the ground by earthquakes and then sunk to the bottom of the ocean, deep in the dark recesses of Plato's own mind some 2,400 years ago. The appearance and operation of the philosopher's stone is virtually absent from the revelatory visions, parables, conundrums and recipes of the early Alexandrian literature and alchemy. In fact, the earliest known allusion to it comes from 7th to 9th century texts written in Arabic and attributed to such legendary figures as Jabir Hayyan and Balinus, the pseudo-Apollonius of Tiana. Through their engagement with Egypto-Hellenistic alchemy in Alexandria and other intellectual centers, these pioneers of the Arab alchemical tradition produced notable works, such as the second Book of the Elements of Foundation and the Book of the Secret of Creation and the Arts of Nature, which preserve the earliest known fragments of the Tabula Smaragdina, which is the Emerald Tablet, a cosmological text that achieved widespread circulation in the 14th century and became known as the Bible of all medieval alchemists. In this compressed summa, or compendium of alchemical knowledge, we learn that the stone's father is the solar orb, also fire or philosophical sulfur, and its mother the lunar orb, also water or philosophical mercury. The wind, on the other hand, is implicated as the womb which carried it, and the volatile and moist humus that is earth is cast in the presiding role of wet nurse. For the most part, this description is rather abstract and ambiguous, and it isn't really until the advent of the transmutational history, a genre of literature which arose as a knee-jerk reaction to the growing fame of alchemy in the early modern period, so we're talking about from about the 16th to the 18th centuries, that we have a more concrete description of the philosopher's stone. Although there appears to be some discrepancies among the primary alchemical writers with respect to the stone's form and colour, all appear to echo a unanimous verdict when it comes to its quintessential features. The alchemists describe the red stone as being a refined and delicate powder, usually quite heavy, that emitted a potent odour and scintillated when held up towards a light source, like shards of a broken mirror. Indigenous to the stone was a scarlet red colour, although others like gold, auburn red, orange red, emerald green and cobalt blue have also been suggested. For instance, Flemish chemist and physician Jean-Baptiste van Helmont was of the opinion that it possessed a saffron colour and sparkled, whilst the alchemist Beauregard claims almost emphatically that it encompassed a vibrant hue like that of a wild poppy and gave off the moist odour of sea salt. Differences of opinion are also ample when it comes to its power of projection, perhaps due to the waxing and waning forces of Mother Nature, which are governed by the astrological movement. Anything from 100 to 1,000,000 times the projection of its own weight in pure silver or gold has been proposed, explicitly from authorities like Arnoldus de Villanova, Isaac of Holland, and Roger Bacon. Once alchemical literature had firmly established the nature of the red stone, comprehensive eyewitness accounts laying bare to the transmutational feats of medieval laypersons began doing the rounds. Foremost and most renowned among these was the Flamel legend, a quasi-historical narrative that transcribed the life of a prosperous medieval Parisian by the name of Nicolas Flamel, who acquired an enigmatic manuscript entitled The Book of Abraham the Jew. Subsequent intercourse with one particular man, a physician named Master Canchus, equipped him with requisite knowledge to descry the chemical formula bubbling beneath the book's hieroglyphic figures and allegorical illustrations. After 3 years of failed experiments and abortions, we learn that he finally succeeded in synthesizing the red stone. This golden moment occurred around midday on Monday the 17th January 1382, when half a pound of red mercury spontaneously morphed into silver. The inbound tide of serendipity didn't stop there. On April the 25th of the same year, at about 5 p.m, Flamel used the red powder to transmute another half a pound of mercury into pure gold. All this was apparently witnessed by the closest and most faithful of his confidants, his wife Perronel. A further 3 successive transmutations took place between 1382 and 1413, and the unprecedented accumulation of wealth it brought Flamel spurred noble philanthropic acts on his part that included the founding of 14 hospitals, 7 churches, and 3 chapels in Paris and Boulogne. Another successful transmutation occurred roughly 2 centuries later when the Scottish alchemist Alexander Seton stunned a Dutch seafarer at a modest dwelling in Enkhuizen, just outside Amsterdam, by transmuting minute quantities of lead into gold right in front of him. In this case, the divine metamorphosis unravelled around 4 p.m. on March the 13th, 1602. 46 years after that, on January the 15th, alchemist Rick Thorson of Vienna allegedly impressed Emperor Ferdinand III at his imperial court in Prague by sprinkling granules of a mysterious red powder onto 3 pounds of mercury. The projection transfigured the latter into gold, an exhibition which so mesmerized the emperor that he proceeded to knight Rich Thorson and had a medal struck to commemorate the event. On Saturday the 25th of May, 1782, James Price, a member of the Fellows of the Royal Society, conducted a public demonstration of alchemical transmutation at his personal laboratory in Guildford, where he cast an alchemical powder called red earth, or the powder of projection, in a crucible of heated mercury, and then took a backward step to watch the transitory expressions on the faces of some very learned onlookers as it morphed into gold. Public incredulity and criticism incited by the literati of the time soon forced Price into surrendering his transmuted product to an assay master and an Oxford goldsmith for closer scrutiny and observation. One can only imagine the satisfaction and the smugness on the part of Price when both examiners confirmed it to be authentic. The latter of these generated much hullabaloo by adding that it was superior to English gold. Reports of the acquisition or manufacture of similar transmutational powders, real or imagined, are subtly interwoven into the biographies of monks like Wenzel Saylor and John Daston, and 17th century scientists of the calibre of Robert Boyle and Sir Isaac Newton. Boyle and Newton were contemporaries and rather hypocritical and duplicitous when it came to their professional profiles. They rigorously and unashamedly denounced alchemy as fraudulent, writing contemptuously of the art to please the academic world while simultaneously ensconced in alchemical endeavours of their own. If these eyewitness reports are to be believed, then there very well may be an alchemical powder of projection in existence known only by adepts under a proverbial oath of secrecy. Of course, the empiricists and those reluctant to veer from established scientific conventions of our times would scoff at such a notion that points to many loopholes inherent to the anecdotal evidence. Indeed, the authenticity of many of these transmutational accounts will forever remain suspect, given that they were circulated and transcribed before the advent of the printing press in 1440. Consequently, they may be nothing more than radical mythologizations of real historical figures, or even completely fictional inventions aimed at validating the chemico-operative tradition and selling it to the exoteric simpletons. Why, for instance, is there a complete absence of birth dates for the master alchemists? Is it because their essence, or the essence of their being, is so mercurial that no one, not even their own mothers, are able to remember the date and time of their birth? Or is it because they never existed? Most of us would probably say the second. On the other hand, how could a chemico-operative enterprise that was based on nonsensical theories and absurdities have survived for as long as it did without an ounce of credibility? How could it have drawn in and fooled hordes of people belonging to all areas of critical inquiry and across vast expanses of time, including some of the most prominent intellectuals and rigorous scientists in Sir Isaac Newton and Robert Boyle? A contemporary parallel to this enigma can be seen in Atlantis. If Atlantis is nothing more than a figment of Plato's imagination, and those who qualify as Atlantean romanticists bide their time searching for submerged walls, temples, and other architectural wonders of the lost city in the depths of the Atlantic or the Pacific Oceans, there's going to be a profusion of very disgruntled and disillusioned individuals entering psych wards of public and private hospitals as well as nursing homes in a few decades from now. Similarly, one would think that if the chemico-operative stream of alchemy with its desire to synthesize an agent of projection called red earth is nothing more than a symbolic transcription of psychological processes of individuation or self-actualization, as Carl Gustav Jung would have us believe, then the operative quest with its purely materialistic outcomes is defunct, and entertaining it nothing short of madness, right? Perhaps the only way to disentangle this Gordian knot, so to speak, would be to disentomb evidence implicating alchemy as a syncretized and holistic knowledge system that may have been lost when human consciousness was appropriated by the dominant left hemisphere of the brain, the side that comes to know reality through quantitative analysis, along with the reductionist and monocular perspectives of the five physical senses. If a case for alchemical theory can be established and supported through empirical evidence of some sort, then there is no reason why so-called red earth shouldn't exist, or why transmutational feats shouldn't be feasible.